Well, hello, YouTube audience. This is Glumpuddle,
And I'm Rilian. Hello.
and if you may know us from the NarniWeb.com podcast, which Rilian is the host of, I'm on it. I was on it quite a bit. We did that for a few years, and now that it looks like the Narnia movies are over, we're just going to transition to talking about movies in general. We'll see how this goes. Not really sure what the format is going to be like or anything. Well, I guess we'll probably experiment a little. So this is kind of our test run. We're going to be doing Captain America today. How are you doing, Rilian?
Good. Feeling patriotic.
Yeah, I guess so. You saw it. How long ago did you see the movie?
I saw Captain America on Monday, and that was about 6 days ago now.
Okay, and I saw it. I think it was opening day 3 weeks ago. Saw it with my brothers. Um, my knowledge of Captain America going into it, I've always liked superheroes in general. I don't know
hmm
as much about him as I do other first-string Marvel characters. I knew he was the Super Soldier Serum, and he was Steve Rogers, and I knew a little bit about Red Skull and the whole theme of World War II propaganda and all that. But that's about all I knew. And
Yep.
what was your kind of knowledge of Captain America going into it?
I I knew in general who he was. I didn't know about any of the villains, or I didn't even know the character's name, but I knew the basic idea of what Captain America was and why he was created and all that.
Okay, I went into the movie with fairly high expectations. Superhero movies have always been a little hit and miss for me. There's a handful I really like, and there's a handful I really don't like. And Thor pleasantly surprised me, and I thought this looked better than Thor. So I went into it with, fairly. I'm not sure if I'd say high, but I expected it to be good.
Yeah, I expected it. I'd heard it was not as good as Thor, so I was not expecting it to be as good as Thor. But the trailers definitely looked better than the Thor trailers. And Thor, I really liked Thor. Thor was a pleasant surprise for me.
My thoughts on Captain America, and neither of us know what the other one thought. So this should hopefully be a
hmm
pretty spontaneous review. But I would never call it a bad movie. It's just that I never really got into it. Like there were
hmm
moments in Thor where I really got into it emotionally, and there were a couple big wow action moments in Thor as well. This one, again, not that there are really any really bad scenes, but there aren't really any big wow action moments, and there aren't really any moments where I got really emotionally invested either. And it also sticks very closely to the superhero formula, I think, almost religiously. So I wouldn't say it was bad. I just never really got into it.
hmm really enjoyed it. I would say that it's a different kind of take. For one thing, it doesn't have a cynical approach, which I really wondered about because, of course, Captain America was supposed to be a very patriotic comic, and it was kind of during the World War II era, which is a very different era that came in, especially with the '60s. So that was kind of refreshing to me that it's not like they were trying to make a really big uh, message about it. I just felt like I could kind of jump into it, and I really liked the main character. I thought Steve Rogers was uh, maybe different from a lot of people, but also you could relate to him. At least I could, and so I actually got very invested in the character. Now I will definitely say, as far as wow action moments, my personal favorite, I think, was probably just the part where he goes in to rescue the POWs. I'll admit there were not any action moments that really stand out to me as being, oh, that was incredible. And I think the first half of the film was definitely better than the second half in
Yeah, I
that
think you,
regard.
you touched on something I wanted to talk about, which is I think this falls into a trap that a lot of superhero movies fall into, which is a two-part structure, where the
hmm
first half is the origin, and then after that he fights some bad guys and the movie's over. And even a lot of superhero movies that I
Yeah.
like have this flaw. Like the original Spider-Man is one of the best examples of that. Where like what is they're sort of telling the Green Goblin's origin alongside Peter Parker's origin,
hmm
but what does the Green Goblin really have to do with Peter Parker until after he becomes Spider-Man? So if it,
Yeah.
it's a lot of superhero movies, they sort of get to the superhero, he becomes who he is, and then you can almost hear the movie go ta-da. Oh, and then I guess we can have him fight a few bad guys, and the movie
Yeah.
can end. And that definitely suffered from that. And one of the
Yeah.
examples I think of a movie that avoided that was Batman Begins, where they had
True.
elements of Batman's origin, um, you know, beginning, middle, end incorporated into the whole story. So the stuff
hmm
of Batman's origin comes back in the third act. So I think that was one of the more
Yeah.
successful superhero origins ever done. But this one felt like, yeah, I was, kind of into it, I guess, for the origin, and then after that it was kind of and then he fought a few bad guys and the movie ended.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the last action scene especially was very. I right now, even having seen it less than a week ago, I have problems remembering a lot of it.
Yeah.
There are little moments. I love Tommy Lee Jones, and I thought a lot of the actors were great. I thought that there were lots of little moments, even just humorous moments, that I thought worked really well. But I'll agree with you. To an extent, I'm reminded a little bit of Iron Man, which which probably was one of the best superhero films at setting up a character's just the character development
Yeah.
with the origin. And then it was sort of like, oh yes, we'll have him fight another Iron Man, and how can we possibly come up with this? Boom, there's the ending.
Well, in Iron Man, they did have, Obadiah Stane. He's the one that got Tony Stark captured, and then he does come back
Uh
at the
huh.
end. So that's
Right.
not as successfully integrated as Batman Begins, but
Yeah.
there is more there than something like Spider-Man or even this.
Here it just seemed more like, and to an extent, the second half of the film had a lot of moments that I just thought were kind of cheesy,
Hmm.
and part of it was okay because I didn't think the film. It's kind of like it didn't take itself that seriously. It was I could tell, look at this and say immediately, even from the trailers, okay, this is not a Chris Nolan superhero film.
Yeah.
This is a film that's going to be trying to kind of be fun and a little bit, hey, they're keeping the outfit for crying out loud.
Yeah.
So to certain elements of the cheesiness and the formula, I didn't mind, but I will say that at least the way it was done, I've seen old formulas done in such a way that it still offered new surprises and it still kept you in the moment the entire time, and it was memorable. And this didn't do that towards the last act.
Yeah, what I've been telling people who haven't seen it and trying to kind of describe the tone to them, and I say, those old newsreels where it's like, our boy is fighting overseas, they would play in theaters. This movie takes place in that world. It's like it takes
Yeah.
place in one of those newsreels, which I kind of enjoyed, not as much as I thought I would. And obviously, the fact that they honor the spirit of that proves that they understand the Captain America comics.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's where it's like, where there are certain things that might be really cheesy in other films. In this one, it's only mildly cheesy and it's partially intentional. So
Hmm.
I did kind of enjoy that part of it.
Yeah. I always have to consider what a film tries to be and how it succeeds.
Yeah.
And in that respect, going back to the kind of the hey, this is an old based on an old comic. We're not revamping it like the Bryan Singer X-Men movies.
Right.
Which in that regard, I could respect that and I enjoyed it.
Yeah. What did you think of the? I think this is one of the most talked about scenes among fans. But there's the bit, and this is the one area that surprised me, and where I felt like it broke formula, which is where after he gets the serum, and you think,
Hmm.
okay, here we are, he's going to become Captain America, and no, he ends up becoming a part of their just sort of
Yeah.
propaganda campaign, and dancing around and punching Hitler on stage, and it kind of caught me off guard.
Yeah.
As someone who's not familiar with Captain America, and that's not something I don't think that happened in the comics, but it is kind of honoring the spirit of what the Captain America comics were.
Yeah. I think that it was to an extent a natural part of the storyline, but I think it was very unnecessary because it's like what they were attempting to do with the character was because of course there's a very stark transition between when he's going to the audiences in the United States and then when he actually goes and meets the I think it was the 107th or something like that,
Hmm.
and there's this contrast of oh these guys are actually doing the
Yeah.
real work, but the thing is the character Steve Rogers wasn't under any delusions. He did not need that kind of revelation. So in terms of his storyline and his character development, I felt it was
Hmm.
very unnecessary. And you could almost, if you just change the placement, the background setting for some of the discussions that he has with Agent Carter and such, you could almost delete that whole segment and move it out of the film, and it's kind of oh they wanted to use him as an experiment. He decided to go fight instead. You could have still had that. I don't think you really gained anything from that.
I really agree with you that it felt like there was a beat to the character they felt they needed to add that they didn't need to add,
Hmm.
and it seemed out of character for Steve Rogers
Yeah.
too. Like earlier in the film, him and Bucky were talking about how he's like, why don't you just go work in the shop or whatever and
Right.
make parts, and he's like, no, I want to be fighting on the front lines, and this seemed kind of similar to that, where they were
Hmm.
asking him to help the war effort in a very indirect way. So it seemed like
Yeah.
he wouldn't go along with that, and I was surprised when he did. It also seems kind of unlikely that the military would have this one super soldier and say,
Yeah.
well, let's have him basically advertise. That seemed like
Yeah.
not the way they would use it.
Yeah. I just thought it was kind of. I thought would a guy Yeah, obviously he didn't want to. He maybe would have rather done that than being stuck in a lab. But would he really have settled for that if this is the same kind of guy who would, with in the
Yeah,
blink of an eye, without thinking, throw himself on a grenade?
yeah.
So I thought that
Overall, I,
was.
mean, I kind of enjoyed. Again, I liked it because it was surprising and it caught me off guard.
Uh-huh.
And I liked, sort of the spirit of the scene. It felt consistent with the tone of the film in a lot of ways. There were things I liked about it. The only thing I didn't like was what it did for Steve Rogers' character.
Yeah.
Overall, I did think Chris Evans did a good job. I think it's a more difficult role than people may think initially
Mm-hmm.
to just play. He's just a good guy. And I would praise his performance not because it's good, but because it's surprisingly not cheesy.
Yeah.
That he's really just this good guy, but it seems pretty sincere. It doesn't seem totally cheesy.
Yeah. And that's something that especially is hard today with people watching superhero films today. Who do people love? Well, they love Batman. They love
Yeah.
Logan and Wolverine. They love the anti-heroes.
And they don't love Superman.
They don't love Superman. No, Superman's too good. Of course, in the new film, he has an illegitimate child, but you have you have this. Well, we don't like the guys that are the goody two shoes. We don't like those superheroes. We like the superheroes that are down and dirty and maybe have a past. And this guy doesn't have that. And it was refreshing, and I liked that it was. It seemed sincere. It was genuine,
Yeah.
and it wasn't cynical. Again,
I wouldn't say that I was super invested in Steve Rogers' character, but I think the fact that I wasn't rolling my eyes, then I was kind of sort of half-heartedly rooting for him, I guess. But just the fact that I didn't kind of roll my eyes the whole time, I think shows how that Chris Evans did a good job with a really challenging role.
yeah.
A couple, and you mentioned, Tommy Lee Jones. Most of the actors I thought were pretty good. Tommy Lee Jones is just playing Tommy Lee Jones again.
I have to say, I got a huge kick out of seeing Neil McDonough in the film after having just watched Band of Brothers, and the fact that he's in this film as one of Captain America's select few. I thought,
Yeah.
this is just classic. I love that.
A couple, I think, kind of comic book issues I think we probably should address before we wrap up here. First off, I thought him throwing the shield is something that works so well in the comic book. That's such an iconic thing they had to
Yeah.
have Captain America do. But in the movie, whenever he did it, and there's a couple things where it looked okay, but then there was that one scene where he throws it 20 feet, punches three guys, does a front flip, and then catches it. So I thought they took it even further than they needed to.
I just I thought, okay, I could get him throwing it. I completely get him throwing it, but I thought, how is it coming back to him? It's
it
not a
bounced back so
boomerang.
perfectly.
How's it coming back? It's like a. It reminded me a little bit of like a yo-yo, and
Yeah.
it comes right back.
They
I
should've
was
done
almost
that.
looking for something that he had, like a magnet that he was activating that would pull it right back to him.
Yeah.
And I thought, let's see, what was the metal called?
Vibranium. Which
Vibranium.
In the comics, it was adamantium.
Yeah, I would have rather them kept adamantium because I'm just thinking
Yeah.
vibranium. Okay, we'll give unobtainium number 1
Oh, man.
under the stupid label for a mineral, and then we'll have vibranium number 2.
Yeah. Now I'll tell you one comic book element I really. I think you're talking about he didn't really like the costume. I loved the costume. I thought it was one of the most successful 2D to 3D transformations of a superhero costume ever done. It looked, functional. It looked like something from the 40s. It still looked like Captain America that I remember from the comic book, though. And it just, it made sense in this world. Just the tone they set for it. I thought it was a very good costume, and I'm disappointed they're changing it for the Avengers.
Okay, I did not know they're changing it for the Avengers, but yeah, I think that certainly for the setting, the 1940s, I wouldn't have changed it at all. I thought it was great.
Yeah.
Very
So
functional.
real quick, let's just sort of give overall ratings. I guess I would give it, out of 4 stars, I would give it a 2 out of 4, and I mean that literally. I mean, it's not good, it's not bad, it's right in the middle. There are a couple a couple things in it, like Chris Evans and like the tone and the costume that I liked. And then there's some things but most of it was just kind of meh. So I would never say it was bad, I just never really got into it. And it follows the formula pretty closely. So it's not bad, it's just nothing special.
Well, if I were operating on a 5-star scale, like I kind of tend to operate, I would say 3 out of 5.
Well, then I would go with 2.5 then, exactly halfway.
Because I would say, I mean, I liked it, and I saw it as more positive than negative. I did like the film. I was glad I saw it, and I'll probably see it again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, see, Thor, I couldn't wait to see Thor again. This one,
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't feel like
Oh,
I need to
I'll
see it
agree with
again.
there. I liked Thor a lot more, and I can't wait to see Thor again.
Yeah, and you saw the Avengers trailer, right?
I did. Looks good.
Cool, and I'm looking forward to the Avengers.
We'll have to review it together.
Yeah, hope so. We'll see if we're still doing this in a year. All right, good first review. We'll see how all this works out.
All right, see you later.